Hello, this is Mara, and in this presentation I'm going to talk to you about perception and pronunciation teaching. I want to share with you one of the important aspects about pronunciation that you may not have thought about, and that is perception. Perception means how your brain processes the sounds that it hears into language. Speech sounds are just vibrations in the air. They have to be interpreted as speech by the listener's brain. And this process of interpretation is called perception. So in this picture, I have a person who's speaking, the waves that are traveling through the air, and then it's reaching someone else's brain, and the brain has to interpret those sounds. Did you know that young babies can tell the differences between the sounds of all the world's languages? But around the age of 9 months, they begin to tune in to their native language and ignore differences that don't matter in their native language. For example, in English, there are many different ways of pronouncing the t sound at the end of a word. I'm going to say the word cat in 3 different ways. Cat, cat, cat. I said the same word in 3 different ways, but because English allows, so English speakers know that those 3 different ways of pronouncing the T sound are still the same as T. So when they hear those words, they say, okay, I heard different sounds, but I know that they mean the same thing. Babies learn that even though pronunciations are different, the meaning of the words is the same. And this is good because it helps us to be able to understand the same language spoken by different people in different situations. You're never going to hear someone pronounce something exactly the same way as someone else, or even exactly the same way as something that they said earlier. So it's important that you have a way of determining what things are the same and what things are different in your language so that you can understand the language correctly. But there's a problem when your brain encounters the sounds of another language because they don't fit into the system it has already established. You can use the system you already have for your native language to try to understand the sounds for the new language, but sometimes that doesn't work very well. I have an analogy. So in this analogy, I'm using an example from visual perception to try to explain a concept about speech perception. On this page, you have 2 color wheels, and you can see that the color wheels have been divided differently into different colors. All of the colors are represented on the color wheel, but the color wheels are divided into different categories. On the left, you have color category system 1, and you can see that in this system, we have 3 possible color categories. We have green, red, and blue. On the right, we have color category system 2. Again, all of the colors are represented, but they are divided into 5 different color categories: green, orange, red, blue, and cyan. Now take a look at this dot in the middle. Depending on which color categorization system you use to categorize this dot, you are going to get a different color. What do I mean by that? If you try to find the color of this dot on color category system 1, its label is going to be red. If you try to find the color of this dot on color category system 2, its category is going to be orange. The color of the dot has not changed, but what is different is the way that the dot is categorized. On one system, it counts as red. On another system, it counts as orange. Speech somewhat works in the same way. In a similar way, when you use the sound system in your brain for your native language to categorize the sounds of a new language, some of the sounds will be categorized incorrectly. And what I mean by incorrectly is that they will be categorized differently from the way that native speakers of that language would categorize them. And that's a problem because when you learn new words in the language, and those words are stored inside your mental dictionary, that mental dictionary will have stored the incorrect sounds as part of that word. I have here an example of the Swedish sound and the way that an English speaker would hear that sound. a Swedish speaker says which in Swedish is quite different from the sound for example, but an English speaker will hear it as an example of in English because English doesn't have a difference between and So when a Swedish speaker says the word köp, an English speaker will probably hear that as an example of köp. And then when the English speaker stores that word in their brain, they're going to store it with the incorrect sound because that was what they heard. Then later, when the English speaker wants to say that word, they're going to access the stored information that they have in their brain, and they're going to say the information that is stored there. But the information that is stored there is incorrect, and so they're going to say köp. And that is the reason why they speak with an accent. When you speak, you access your mental storage of words. Some of those words have the wrong sounds in them, so you speak with an accent. And therefore, accent is caused by listening. A lot of people mistakenly believe that when you speak a new language, you speak with an accent because your mouth muscles can't move in a certain way. But that is not correct. Muscles can be trained to do anything we want them to do. What is different about what I mean is that when you listen to a new language, you're actually hearing the sounds of that new language as if they were sounds of your native language, and that's why you speak with an accent. So accent is caused by listening. Here's another example. English has a distinction between the z sound and the s sound. Swedish does not have a distinction between the s sound and the z sound. So, when Swedish speakers hear English speakers saying the z sound, they often incorrectly hear it as a s. So an English speaker might say a word like zoo, and a Swedish speaker will hear that as an example of su. And therefore they will store that word with the s sound in their brain because that's the sound that they heard. Then, when it's time for the Swedish speaker to say that word again, they access the stored information in their brain, which has now the incorrect information, and then they say that information and it comes out as su. So they're speaking with a Swedish accent. So now that we know that accent is caused by listening, how can we train pronunciation? In order to change pronunciation, you start by training perception. Since mistakes in perception are one of the causes of mistakes in pronunciation, you can improve pronunciation by improving perception. And research has shown that this can be done with perceptual training. In perceptual training, basically what you do is listen to many examples of the sounds that you are trying to distinguish between, and you get feedback. A good website for perceptual training for English is called EnglishAccentCoach.com. This website is designed by a researcher, and it is based on research about how to best train perception. So, now that we understand how perception affects pronunciation, what implication does this have for our pronunciation teaching? One thing that this implies for pronunciation teaching is that we should always start with listening training. For example, when I'm teaching students about how to use pausing properly when speaking English, I usually start with an exercise where they listen to someone speaking English and mark pauses on a transcript. Then they try to find a pattern. I'm doing this for two reasons. The first reason is I want them to be able to listen to pauses, and I want them to be able to hear what we're talking about when we're talking about pauses in English. The other thing is I want them to notice that English has a different pattern of pauses than maybe the language that they're used to using. So after the listening exercise, then they are ready to take in the new information about pausing because they have perceived that there is a difference between the way their native language uses it and the way that English uses it. I hope this has been an informative video. Feel free to post your questions about perception and pronunciation teaching in the discussion.